Hey everybody, back with a new review, and I will apologize right now for my old white man pronunciation of this movie, as well as my pandemic crazy old man, I don't know, mad scientist hair. Anyway, I am reviewing La Llorona, 2019, officially 2020 for most people. It seems like I say that like every single time something gets a tiny release in a festival in 2019, but it's really getting released this year in 2020. Once again, it's on Shudder because Shudder is one of the best places around right now to find interesting and new streaming content. If Shudder wants to sponsor me, go for it. They don't, so I'm just straight up a fan at this point. Anyway, La Llorona just came out this last few days. It is directed by let's try this again. Jairo Bustamante. I'm not sure about the first name. It's Jayro, and since it's Latin in origin, it's probably Jairo or Jairo. This is not The Curse of La Llorona, which came out on Blumhouse about a year ago and was generally panned. This is a very different movie and is a kind of a revisionist or alternate take on the La Llorona traditional story. Now, if you don't know the story, I don't know if it's better or worse to know the story. I'm not super familiar with it, although a ton of people grow up knowing it. If you know the story, you're going to come in with certain expectations, and this movie will play with those expectations. If you don't know the story, you can still appreciate this movie, I think, equally. It just enriches it a little bit to kind of know how this is playing with the classic kind of ghost story. Now, what is La Llorona? First of all, this is directed, as I said, by Mr. Bustamante. He's done a couple other movies, Tremors and Ixcanal, Ishcanal. It's an X, so I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And both have a lot of the same actors, so I'm really quite curious to go back and check out one or two of those movies, because this movie is really barely a horror movie. I would say, if anything, it's more of a political drama with horror or ghost story elements. Now, once again, Shudder kind of upends the expectations of a horror site by giving us some really interesting international content. They are really consistent about doing that. So, what is the basic concept of this? Well, this takes place, it seems to take place in current times, and it is during a trial for genocide. So, it's in Guatemala, and there was a Guatemalan genocide that nobody probably knows about. I kind of looked back on it, and it's a real thing. And it looks like during about a 15 to 20 year period, there was kind of a systematic kind of cleansing and genocide of especially the Mayan, and they would call them natives in that culture, but the traditional or the indigenous Mayan culture that was mostly in the north of Guatemala, from my understanding, were getting basically cleared out, and genocide was occurring. And partly it sounds like, according to this movie, was to clear up land for use in oil, and companies going in there and taking the land. Kind of a very common and tragic story that goes all around the world. Now, in this movie, you start with a family, a rich family, and the grandfather, kind of the patriarch of the family, is Enrique, played by Julio Diaz. And he just kind of looks like your kind of kindly old man. But very quickly in the movie, you see he's in a trial. He's being accused of basically crimes against humanity and genocide. And at one point, you get a very heartfelt testimonial by an older woman who talks about how he basically murdered and raped many, many people. And the whole crowd is full of people that are like her, that are calling for justice. And the majority of the movie involves him in his house, rich house, especially for that nation, with his daughter, who is a doctor as well, so she is able to care for him in his ailing older age. His wife, who kind of is the long-suffering wife who has kind of turned a blind eye to what he may actually be, what kind of person he actually is, and the granddaughter. And once again, Relic, we had the three generations of women. Here you've got three generations of women revolving around this older, man and what he has done in the past. It's really interesting in the fact that you don't get a lot of movies where it kind of takes the point of view of, one of these people who commits atrocities in the past, and time has passed on, and it's coming home to roost. You think of like, Nazis getting hunted down and things like that, where they've gone and hidden away and are trying to live a normal life now, and let the past be the past. You always hear that kind of stuff. But you don't really get these kind of movies very often where you get to see their family. And you get all the different variations here of kind of denial and turning a blind eye by the family. What is really interesting about this movie, so early on, the trial happens, and basically it's annulled by the court system. So essentially he's found guilty, and it's annulled. It's not annulled is probably not the right word, but it's basically nullified. So essentially he's going to get away with it, but the public is kind of in uproar over it. So for the entire movie it's almost weirdly like a reverse zombie movie or something, where a zombie movie, the common thing is everyone's like holed up in a cabin or a house, and they're kind of barring the world off from these zombies outside. Well, here it's this kind of rich, isolated family who's kind of been able to avoid the ramifications of what the grandfather has done. And they're all kind of holed up in this rich, opulent house, and it's surrounded by protesters the whole time. So the entire movie, there is a soundtrack, but the entire movie, there's a constant sound of a protest outside the walls of their, their oasis. And it really creates an unnerving, an unease, and just this constant drone of impending, doom on them in a sense. And it's all based on this crowd outside. And there's various chants going on all the time, or music or drum beats. And it's really unique, and I hadn't quite seen that before, and I really like it a lot. The other major aspect of this movie is pretty much right after the main hearings, early on in the movie, the entire staff, the entire maid, and all the servant staff of this house leave, because they're all basically of the same class that he abused. And you kind of get a feeling, and I don't know Guatemalan culture very much, that, the rich, class basically uses this more native Mayan culture or group of people as kind of their servant class. So there's like a racial cultural thing going on there. So all but one of the staff leaves, except the one long suffering staff member stays behind. But in the middle of that, this one new person comes to join their staff, named Alma. And very quickly you get the feeling, she's younger. She's played by Maria Mercedes Corey. She's really good. And she's in his other movies too. And you get the feeling really quickly that she's also of the same cultural group. But very quickly also she's unusual and a little, it's very quiet and a little creepy. And you wonder, what is her deal exactly? And basically that's the rest of the movie. Them dealing with the emotional ramifications of what the grandfather's done, the various generations of women around him kind of coming to terms with it, and how Alma being introduced into the family kind of, in a way, exacerbates all of these issues. And eventually it does get, there are creepy moments and spooky moments, but it's not overtly horror, I guess I would say. It's almost more of a metaphorical kind of a use of the La Llorona mythology. But the way it's done is super effective, I think, and really good. I think this is a pretty fantastic movie, and one that, once again, will just kind of go under the radar for most people because they're going to think it's just a straight up, kind of exploitive horror movie. It's on Shudder, so they may not have Shudder. Definitely, if you have a chance to come across this or to check it out, I would advise you to do so. It's really good. All right, that's all for now. I will be back soon with some more reviews.